You're listening to the I'm Busy Being Awesome podcast with Paula Engebretson, episode number 265. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are diving into a powerful technique to help us lighten our cognitive load and really reduce the potential of ADHD shutdown as much as possible. Because when we can do that, when we can reduce that experience of ADHD shutdown, the potential of ADHD shutdown, it becomes so much easier to really take care of ourselves first and then others as well, and ensure that we are busy being awesome without burning out. Okay, so that's what I want to look at today. How can we put some supports in place to help prevent us from slipping into ADHD shutdown? Now, before we talk about the specific strategy, let's talk about what ADHD shutdown actually is, okay? So let's explore what I mean when I'm talking about ADHD shutdown. It's something that I think a lot of us experience, but we might not have a name for it. So what I'm talking about when I say ADHD shutdown is that it's this state where our brain becomes completely overwhelmed by tasks, decisions, stimuli, all of this different input, and we mentally and physically shut down. It's like our brain's way of saying, I cannot handle this right now. I am past my capacity. This is a no, does not compute, and it leads to inactivity, it leads to avoidance, it can lead to complete withdrawal. And this can last for a really short period of time or an extended period of time. So what is happening specifically? Like I said, ADHD shutdown, it is this state of overwhelm, and it results in this inability to really function in the way that we want to be able to make confident decisions or any decisions. And essentially, it's a protective response to this intense stress, this intense experience of overwhelm, where our brain then shuts down to avoid further overwhelm. So maybe you have this really long to-do list and multiple tasks demanding your attention and lots of requests coming in from a bunch of different people. And suddenly your brain's like, I can't, full stop. I can't even. And we just can't get started on any of them. And you might end up staring at that list, feeling completely frozen, unable to move forward. And it's just this state of shutdown. Now, when does ADHD shutdown often occur? Well, for every person, it's going to be a little bit different. Of course, that's often my caveat. It does tend to differ depending on different people, where you're at, but I will share a list of the most common situations. Okay, so first of all, during times of high stress, when we are really feeling the pressure from a lot of different situations, right? And our brain is freaking out about it. It's having a lot of different thoughts about, I have to do all of this. There's not enough time. How am I going to get it all done? Everybody's relying on me, right? And we have this overwhelming demand on our executive functions, on our time, on our ability. That can be a situation where we slip into ADHD shutdown. Similarly, when there are too many decisions to make and we're facing extreme decision fatigue. Again, maybe we haven't gotten enough sleep. Maybe our executive functions just didn't show up to work. Maybe we've been making decisions all day and now it's the end of the day and we simply cannot make another decision and we slip into shutdown, right? So decision fatigue can be a big one. It can come up in highly stimulating environments where all of our senses are just overloaded. Okay, so there's lots of different situations where this ADHD shutdown can happen. And it's important for us to start learning when it happens most for each of us, because we want to know that. Having that awareness allows us to put in supports ahead of time to help prevent it from happening as much as possible. Now, will it still happen? Yeah, because we have ADHD, but it can happen less, especially in the situations where it's more predictable because we've found these patterns. We see them come up more often. So Maybe it's right before a big project deadline and you're feeling really overwhelmed by the amount of work and that pressure, and your brain is thinking, I can't get it all done, and how am I going to manage, and I should have gotten started faster, and your brain can't decide where to start. Maybe that is a situation where it comes up for you. Or maybe you don't have any problems with that type of demand, but for you, it's when you get home from work and the kids are asking you all of these different questions about what's for dinner, and can I have screen time, and what can I watch, and can you help me find this, and I need this with homework, and then don't forget about that. And your brain just goes into shutdown, right? So starting to learn when it comes up most for you can be really supportive. So first and foremost, we want to start creating this awareness. We want to start getting curious about where it comes up without judgment, as always, okay? We just want to get curious so we can go, oh, that's where it happens for me quite often. Good to know. Now I can start putting in supports because, again, it makes sense that this is happening for me. Now what do I need? So at the very beginning of this episode, I did talk a little bit about what ADHD shutdown looks like, but I'll talk a little bit more in detail so that we can, again, start identifying it in us, because it can look a lot of different ways. So maybe there's some inactivity, you kind of stop doing the things, or maybe you are withdrawing. So you're actually doing less than you normally would like to, withdrawing from tasks, withdrawing from participating in things, withdrawing from responsibilities that you've taken on, really kind of pulling back. It can also look like an avoidance of making decisions. You know you have decisions that you want to make. You know the next step is to make a decision, but we keep putting it off. And it might not be intentional. Your brain might be playing some sneaky thoughts like, I just need to do a little more research. I just need to ask a few more people. And it can come up as this avoidance of decision making and putting things off because we're in the shutdown mode. You may also just notice stronger emotional responses. Maybe you find yourself feeling more anxious or feeling more frustrated or feeling generally stuck. Your brain is just like, I don't know. I'm just stuck. I don't know what to do next. That might be a signal for you of ADHD shutdown. So again, maybe after a particularly busy day at work, and you're making tons of decisions and you're really challenging your executive functions, you come home and your brain's like, I don't know what to eat for dinner. I can't. I have no idea what I want to eat. I'm so hungry, but I can't possibly make another decision. And there's no way in the world that I'm going to go through that stack of mail that I told myself I would do tonight. No way. No more decisions can be made today. And it might show up in shutdown like that. Now, here's the deal. I know we might have some thoughts about this. Our brains may not love the idea that we do navigate this ADHD shutdown. But I think if we can pause and understand a bit better why our brains do tend to navigate this shutdown, it helps us to step out of judgment and annoyance about it and instead have a bit more compassion and understanding. Because when we can drop into compassion for the situation, for what's happening, we can go, oh, okay, well, I guess that makes sense. So given that, what supports do I want to put in place? So let's talk about why the ADHD brain does deal with ADHD shutdown. So the ADHD brain processes information differently. We have a hard time filtering through all of the different information, all of the different outputs out there. Okay, a neurotypical brain can kind of filter through some of that input. Our brains have a much more challenging time with that. And because of that, it often leads to sensory overload and a difficulty in managing all the things because our brain has so much input coming in. And this constant need to make decisions about where we're going to focus and all the things coming in can really quickly exhaust our mental resources, which then triggers that shutdown. So as busy, awesome brains, we tend to be balancing work and social commitments and personal tasks and all of these different things. And when we're doing all of this without clear supportive strategies in place, it can quickly lead to overwhelm and subsequently shutdown. Now, ADHD shutdown, of course, has many different layers to it. And as I'm talking about this, perhaps in later episodes, we can explore some of the different components, recognize when we're slipping into it. How do we do that? And what can we do when we're actually in shutdown, and how can we get out of it, right? There's all of these different layers. But today, what I really want to focus on is the front end. I want to help us prepare ourselves to avoid slipping into ADHD shutdown as much as possible. And today we're going to do that by talking about a powerful strategy of making decisions ahead of time. When done in a supportive way, in a specific way that we're going to talk about today, in certain situations, pre-decisions can truly set us up for success. By making decisions ahead of time and carefully shaping that decision in a way that doesn't feel restrictive to our brains, we in turn help reduce the number of choices we need to make in the moment, the overload that we're trying to navigate, and we ultimately can free up our mental energy for more important tasks and priorities where we want to focus our attention. Now, I know some of your brains right now heard me say making decisions ahead of time or pre-decisions, and you immediately felt some pushback. Your whole body was like, oh God, no, don't tell me to make decisions. Don't tell me to create another routine. And you feel trapped. You feel confined. You may already want to skip past this episode because you're like, yeah, that's not a strategy for me. If that is you, please know I see you, and that is not the goal of this episode. We are not here to box you into a routine or decisions forever and ever. And also, if you did notice a kind of pullback from the idea of setting some decisions, setting routines, especially when we're feeling really overwhelmed, it makes sense that you were kind of like, oh, that sounds terrible, because routines can seem extra confining, extra inflexible when we are already feeling really overwhelmed. So if your brain is thinking, oh my gosh, I'm really overwhelmed, and now you're telling me I have to lock in some strict routine, that can feel incredibly counterproductive. What? No, that sounds terrible. Because we're adding in this fear that, oh my gosh, if I add in structure, I'm going to have more pressure, and then I have to do more and get it done perfectly. That's just going to contribute to the shutdown. So it makes sense if your body was like, oh gosh, don't tell me to make decisions and stick to them. I'm already so overwhelmed. If you're worried about sticking to a strict schedule and that it's going to limit your spontaneity and your freedom and you're going to feel trapped, and so you avoid this topic altogether, please stick with me. This is literally built for you. Okay, so let's talk about this. How can we incorporate pre-decisions? Well, first of all, let's talk about what pre-decisions are compared to some sort of rigid routine, which is what most of our brains think about, and these rigid rules and decisions that are locked in forever and ever. Okay, pre-decisions, the strategy we're going to talk about today, offer so much flexibility within this framework. It is not a routine or decisions that require strict adherence. Pre-decisions are super adaptable. They can be modified based on whatever is going on in your life. They are not set in stone. They are there as a support when your brain feels overwhelmed. So for example, let's say that you're a brain who tends to spin a lot and go into shutdown when you are thinking about breakfast. Your meds haven't kicked in, you're still feeling tired, and now you're trying to decide what on earth you're going to make for breakfast, and you can spend more time than you want trying to decide. Okay? If that is you at certain times, you might make a pre-decision that anytime I notice I'm spinning for more than 3 to 5 minutes, I have oatmeal. That's what we do. Now, I'm not saying that you need to decide to have oatmeal every day. No. You can have whatever you want for breakfast. If you wake up and you're like, I would love an omelet today, or I would love to have leftovers from last night this morning, amazing. But if your brain is feeling overwhelmed, if it's struggling to make decisions, if you notice that you're opening the fridge and you're just staring, air conditioning the whole house, as my dad would say, if that is you, then having a fallback, that pre-made decision ahead of time, You can go, oh, wait, nope. I've been standing here for quite a while. I'm even scrolling Pinterest looking for breakfast ideas. This is taking a really long time. Decision made. We're doing oatmeal. It feels like a very loving support, a fallback plan if you can't make that decision in the moment. If you have a hard time deciding what to do after work, right? You know you want to have some sort of transition, but also at the end of the workday, you've been making decisions all day. And so it's hard to make a decision on what you want to do. Maybe you have a decision that you read the latest book on your Kindle. Or if you can't decide where to begin on a Monday morning, you look at your list of all the tasks, you get into your office and you're sitting down and you're looking at all the things and you are sitting there frozen. You're staring at the list or you're clicking between tabs and you go, oh, yep, I'm in shutdown here. Maybe you have a decision made ahead of time that you pull out the prioritization matrix workbook that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, right? If you have not gotten that yet, check out episode 263 and then grab the prioritization workbook. It's at imbusybeingawesome.com/matrix. And maybe you use that as your support. So anytime you're spinning, anytime you notice, oh, I can't decide what to work on, the decision is you go to the workbook. Again, that doesn't mean you can't do something else. If you sit down and you go, oh, I know that I wanted to work on this, I already decided it. Beautiful, do that. But in the times when you're spinning, use the fallback plan. Now, contributing to this idea is one other concept that I love to play with. I talk about it all the time through different lenses, and this is thinking in containers of time. And what I mean in this situation is setting some sort of predetermined time frame where you are maintaining these decisions. Doing this provides structure and it reduces the need to constantly reevaluate your choices. So again, we're helping to reduce decision fatigue. We're helping create some structure without leaving you feeling trapped in this decision for eternity. So let me give you some examples. Maybe you're often overwhelmed in the morning when you're trying to decide what to wear and you just kind of stare at your closet or you try a bunch of stuff on and nothing works and you just hate it all. What you could do with this idea of pre-decisions in a container of time is you go, you know what? For the summer, that container of time, for the summer months, whenever I notice I'm overwhelmed and I can't decide what to wear, what I will wear is a button-down shirt and capris. Or what I will wear are one of these 3 shirts. Now you can always wear something else. If your brain is up for it and it's ready to make decisions and it's feeling good, go to town. Wear whatever you want. But on those days when your executive functions did not show up, when you're struggling, when you know you're already making a bunch of other decisions, having something made ahead of time with a container of time around it is such a loving gift. We go, oh, don't worry. It's the summer. I'm doing one of these 3 shirts. We can decide again in the fall what we want that decision to be. So you're not trapped forever, but you have that supportive framework for a time frame that's good for you. So again, it's not set in stone. It's not a must. These pre-decisions are a gift that you're giving yourself so you don't have to decide in the moment when your brain just doesn't have the capacity to do so. If you do have the capacity, amazing. But if you don't, you've taken care of you. So now let's talk about some practical examples. What types of pre-decisions could we make? What types of fallback plans can we put in place to help lighten our cognitive load? Because I'm telling you, they may not seem like a big deal, but these small changes, these little decisions can make such a big difference in your day-to-day life because we're constantly making decisions. So I mentioned breakfast, right? Maybe you decide what your fallback breakfast idea is or lunch idea or whatever, and you just have that set in place. So if you can't decide, you know what you'll fall back on. Or maybe you get a little more specific for a week. Maybe you have a go-to rotation of meals, of food that you tend to just have in the pantry or in the fridge or whatever, and then you can change it whenever you want to. So maybe on the days when decision making is just too much, you know that on Sundays You make some sort of meal that has a lot of protein, like you make enough protein so that you have leftovers. So you do like chicken dish or something like that, okay? And then you have that on Sunday, and on Monday, you know that you can have a salad with the leftovers of the chicken on top or something, some sort of chicken salad. And then on Tuesdays, you do breakfast for dinner. And on Wednesdays, you do spaghetti with meat sauce, and you make enough meat so that you can do tacos as well on Thursdays. And on Fridays, you order pizza, and on Saturdays, you clean out the fridge. And again, you don't have to follow this when you have capacity to make decisions. If you decide on Tuesday, I don't want breakfast for dinner, I want chicken teriyaki, great, do it. I'm all in. But on the days when you've had a full day and you just got home and you don't want to make another decision, you've got it covered. You know you can always do breakfast for dinner. Honestly, that is my go-to one decision for dinner. If I can't decide what to make, if I'm just at capacity, I don't want to think about another thing, I have an omelet and oatmeal. Breakfast for dinner. Always a win in my book. Maybe you simplify some areas in your wardrobe. So you have, like I mentioned, a handful of tops or a handful of outfits that you know will work in this season, and you lock those in. You could take that even further. Maybe you do some sort of capsule wardrobe where everything literally matches, so it doesn't matter what you grab. That can take a bit more decision making on the front end. So if it feels fun for you, that could be an option. But there's always places to play with the wardrobe in making what you wear easier by deciding a couple of things ahead of time. You can do the same with household things. So for example, every Friday, I wash my bedding. That's just the day I wash my bedding. I've decided. It doesn't feel confining to me. If I need to move it to the weekend or whatever, it's fine. But Fridays is when I do it. Or on Thursdays, we put in our grocery order. And I'm just adding stuff throughout the week. And I know on Thursday, I put in my grocery order. Now, does that mean that I can't run to the grocery store on Tuesday because I need eggs for my omelet? No, of course I can. I'm not locked into only getting groceries on Thursday. But I just know that's when I'm making that decision. That's when I'm pressing the order button. You might simplify and make decisions ahead of time in terms of social activities and commitments. So maybe you decide how many activities outside of work you're open to doing per season. Because again, as busy, awesome humans, we tend to do a lot of things. We want to do a lot of things, and we may not be totally aware of our capacity. So maybe we decide ahead of time, oh, I do this many things this season. When I get asked to do more, it's a no for now, maybe next season. Or maybe you decide how many activities your kids participate at one time during the school year, or how many times you get together with your friends throughout the week, throughout the month, whatever it is. Making those decisions ahead of time can be so supportive. I also love the idea of pre-decisions, of these fallback decisions, whenever we want to shift into relaxation mode. I often talk about these transition activities that allow us to shift from one state to another. And especially if we've been go all day, taking care of the family, of our kiddos, or working at the office or whatever. You're making all these decisions, you're doing all of these things, and then you come home and you're ready to relax. And you're also asking yourself to make more decisions about what you want to do. But if you can have a couple of fallback plans for the days when you don't have capacity to make that decision, and instead you know, oh, when I'm at this level, I read a book, or I take a walk, or I crochet the latest project, or I work on a puzzle, or I do this meditation. Having that quick go-to decision made when you can't decide because you're already overwhelmed is so helpful, especially when we want to relax. We're trying to figure out what that relaxation transition activity is, and we don't have capacity. Give yourself the gift of a handful of decisions that you can fall back on when you don't have the capacity to choose something new. And then finally, I love having these fallback decisions, these pre-made decisions for situations when we might be overstimulated or dysregulated. So again, when we are feeling overstimulated, when we are dysregulated, that is perhaps the most powerful situation in which we can create these pre-decisions, because our prefrontal cortex has certainly left the building in that moment. So by having these fallback plans at the ready, it's such a beautiful gift. So having maybe a certain playlist that you pull up when you're feeling really overwhelmed and you need to ground yourself. Maybe you have a Spotify playlist that really helps. And so if you notice you're feeling dysregulated or really overwhelmed and you need a minute and you can't decide what to do, you have that fallback of, oh, I have my playlist. I'm going to go sit on the deck and listen to that. Or maybe you have a favorite weighted blanket and you sit in your chair with an eye mask on for 10 minutes. You know that's your go-to when you can't decide what you need to regulate. Or maybe you have a friend who you love to call when you want to verbally process through something, and they can do the same for you. So you grab your phone and you head out for a walk and you call them up, and that is your go-to. And you know that they can do the same with you. Or you have a meditation app, or you have a 30-second breathing exercise. It doesn't matter, but choosing one or two go-to fallback things that you don't have to decide on in the moment, you just know that's what you can do, is so effective when we're feeling overstimulated or dysregulated. And if you want some ideas, I actually have an entire episode on it. It's 247, and I talk about 8 different ADHD emotional regulation strategies that you can do in real time wherever you're at. They're quite discreet. So I will link to that in the show notes too, because again, I think this is one of the most powerful situations, is whenever we're overwhelmed or overstimulated, having that fallback plan, having that pre-decision is such a gift. So you don't have to actually decide and demand more of your executive functions when they're already feeling very challenged. Okay, so we've talked about the benefits of pre-decisions. We've talked about examples. Now, how do we actually incorporate this into your life? What can we actually do? What are the step-by-steps? So again, the goal here is to reduce stress. The goal here is to make your life easier, not add more rules or routines or structure that doesn't feel supportive. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is gather some awareness. Where do I notice this coming up the most? When do I notice that I'm slipping into ADHD shutdown? Is it when I'm trying to make a lot of decisions at work? Is it after work when I have a lot of people asking me different questions about dinner and when I can do screen time and what we can watch and where my XYZ thing is? Is it at different times when you're out in social events? When do you notice yourself slipping into shutdown? Make note of that, because that's where you want to begin putting in supports. And from there, we're going to start small. We're going to choose 1, maybe 2 areas to make a pre-decision, to make that fallback plan, and then try it out. See how it goes. And allow for flexibility, allow for adjustments, allow for iteration to see what works and what doesn't. And then implement those strategies and adjustments as needed. Because I'm telling you, when we can incorporate these pre-decisions, it becomes this powerful tool to help you manage overwhelm and reduce that decision fatigue, both of which help us sidestep ADHD shutdown. Again, ADHD shutdown happens when the brain becomes so overwhelmed by tasks and decisions and stimuli, and we mentally just shut down. We cannot process anymore. But when we make pre-decisions, when we create these decisions ahead of time, we're making fallback plans that lighten the cognitive load in that moment. And it makes it so much easier to navigate those situations that are otherwise quite overwhelming for the brain. Now, it's important to stress that these pre-decisions are, again, not rigid rules you have to follow. They are not strict. Instead, they are these reliable backup plans that you can use whenever you want to, because they are this loving gift that you created for yourself whenever that future version of yourself doesn't have capacity to decide. Whenever your brain is like, I just can't, you go, don't worry, I've got you. We made a decision already. Think of them as these easy options that you can rely on whenever you're feeling stretched thin. The beauty of these pre-decisions lies in their flexibility because they offer this structure without the confinement. You're not trapped in the decisions. They are gifts. They are optional. They are there to help make your life easier whenever you want to use them. So again, start small, pick 1 or 2 areas where you can make a decision ahead of time and use them whenever it feels like too much to make a decision in the moment. By implementing these pre-decisions, you're going to free up your mental energy. You're going to free up that brain space for the areas where you want to put your energy and your attention, and you're really setting yourself up for success. All right, my friends, that's going to do it for us this week. And if you are ready to take these concepts and apply them to your life, if you are ready to learn how to support your ADHD in a way that works best for you, I would love to have you join us in We're Busy Being Awesome. Enrollment is open right now. It is my small group coaching program designed specifically for ADHD brains like ours. You can learn more through the link in the show notes or head to I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/group. Also, if you find yourself struggling with prioritization, if you're having a hard time identifying what's most important and where you want to put your focus today, this week, this month, be sure to check out my free workbook. It's at I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/matrix for ADHD-friendly strategies to prioritize in a way that works for your brain. Until next time, keep being awesome. I'll talk with you soon.